Thanks, Mark. All right, well, I'm pretty pleased to be speaking first because I'm not a lawyer. So many smarter people than me will go and dive into the weeds of stuff later on today. As CEO of Mintbase, I really stride the intersection between, the coders and the entrepreneurs who really hate dealing with regulation, and our legal teams that I interface with quite a bit, who are always very concerned with what we and our clients are doing. At Mintbase, we do NFT infrastructure. So we have our own marketplace. We enable businesses to build their own marketplaces with our SDK. We have an indexer so that we can index NFTs across the blockchain. We're built on Near. We're focused on Near primarily today. And, I've been in sort of the blockchain space since 2016. At the time, we were doing, just regular tokens. Started to get involved in the NFT space in 2020. And I think NFT space is really interesting because it allows a lot of people from non-traditional backgrounds to enter and start building really interesting projects. But we haven't seen many of them yet. I think today we've seen mostly art PFP collections that some people get excited to buy, not so much. I'm more interested in the utility aspects of what NFTs can do. And the big disconnect is, blockchain evolves at the pace that engineers want it to, right? So it's evolving, code infrastructure first, really light so far on the regulation infrastructure, which is really required for us to get to utility NFTs. So the presentation that I'm going to walk through today is really focused on a framework for people with non-legal backgrounds to wrap their head around what they need to think about for building their businesses, because every business is going to be unique. NFT regulation doesn't really make sense. It's going to be regulation for whatever industry you're in. And then you think about NFTs the same way you think about like payments regulation, right? It's just a smaller component of the overall model that you want to do. So maybe we can jump to the next slide. Do we have a slide? Okay, great. Next slide. Perfect. All right, so this deck kind of last minute because my original deck was rejected, so I had to build it while I was at a happy hour. Fun times. 2 parts. First part going over property rights and property law that everyone should really be aware of. And there's a great book called The End of Ownership, Property in the Digital Age, which I highly recommend if you want, an intro into this subject matter, or if you have, entrepreneurs and friends who are interested in getting a dive into sort of how the history of IP law has framed the current market for NFTs, and then, how NFTs can fit on top of this stuff. So if we go to the next slide, it should be a sort of the 4 tenets of property rights. This is clicker. Thank you. So real property, things like land, personal property, your car, intellectual property. If you're an author, it's the copyright to your publications. And then intangible property, you think things like taxi medallions, licenses, things like that. So whatever business that you're in, if you're using an NFT should be representing one of these things, but not really the NFT, right? The NFT is the digital asset holding one of these things. The actual thing itself should be in the metadata of the NFT. For the purposes of where we are today with blockchain, we're really going to be focusing on personal for the sake of this conversation. Most of the NFTs that we're seeing today are really about, artists putting their art into NFTs, putting them out online. What does that ownership mean? Once we've figured that out, I think we move more into, the other parts of property. Whoops. So I'll start with this. So digital transformation has really affected property and ownership in ways that have really restricted consumer rights, right? If we take the book, for example, books say when you buy them, you own them. The bad is they can be heavy. I'm an avid reader. I've got a gigantic bookshelf at home. Moving is always a pain. But I can do whatever I want with the book, right? I can burn it. I can loan it to friends. I can resell it. Digital transformation for property, things that, like books, have elements of copyright and IP in them, have really changed ownership a lot. If you have ebooks today, you do not own that book, right? You sign a license agreement with Apple or Amazon or whoever you're purchasing that book from. You get benefits to it. You can store that whole library of books in your backpack, but you're really restricted from reselling, from loaning, from these ownership things that maybe in books not such a big deal, but as we move forward and think of other examples, becomes a much more significant reflection of what consumers' rights are in this new age of technology. And the reason for that primarily is a business model problem, right? So if you think of just in terms of the book example, the transition from physical creation and sale to digital creation and sale, you quickly realize that, it's just become a lot cheaper to make books, to distribute books, to sell books, right? The biggest cost change on the digital side has been the marketing dollars, right? You can spend a lot more on marketing, try to acquire a lot more market share of the digital distribution model than physical. But theoretically, the costs of things like ebooks should be a fraction of what a traditional book should be, right? As soon as you've printed a book, right, you've printed one book, how are you going to copy it? It's very hard for a consumer to copy a physical book, send it to someone else. If there wasn't DRM inside of ebooks, I could copy it 1 million times, give it to everyone in New York for free. Publishers wouldn't like that. So there's an idea of a IP in the software industry today. So thinking through things like digital rights management, first sale doctrine, end user license agreements. This stuff isn't going away. This stuff is, for NFT creators, priority number one in terms of thinking through how you can get the licenses and the terms of service elements of legal to ensure that the courts are going to treat NFTs as ownership items, not as securities. So embedding these types of legal elements into the NFT, into the metadata, is really important. But there's a couple of big challenges with that. One is secondary sales, right? So how can you ensure that the purchasers of these NFTs really understand what they're buying? It's easy to do that in initial sale. Sort of the silver standard today for how you do that is you have to click the I agree to the terms of service when you purchase something today. Gold standard is force the scroll and then click the terms of service. In a marketplace, you can build that in very easily into the primary sale of the marketplace. It's one of the things we're building at Mintbase. But then how do you do secondary sales so that those terms of services and rights hold up? So that once you have purchased an NFT, when you sell it to your friend, they're going to also have seen the terms of services and the end user license agreement. So that's where we're coming in right now at Mintbase, and we're building these things, and we're talking to folks. And it's different for every industry, right? So it's hard to summarize, and that's why I think my initial deck got rejected. But if you guys are interested from a creator and entrepreneur perspective, want to talk about your business, delighted to talk with you. And if you are a lawyer or someone who's actually working on this today and trying to figure out how it can work for your clients, also would love to talk to you, and you can let me know. One of the examples of the first clients that we're really thinking through all the way on this is Slick. They're building an NFT photo licensing platform for NBA and NFL photographers so that they can put their images into NFTs, have it licensed so that NBA teams have signed off, and I see I'm getting kicked off the stage, but yeah, feel free to talk to me afterward, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.